about a year ago, I decided to take a break from making films and return to writing novels. That's where I actually started my creative career. But for the past 3 years or so, I'd been doing nothing but film. Because I was really nervous, I thought, well, then maybe I should start a writer's group so that writers could give me feedback about this novel, because I haven't dived into a novel in almost 20 years. I've been doing so many other things. So I tried to put together a writer's group, and the first step for that, of course, is finding a good space. There was a huge community center in downtown Port Orchard where I live, and they were willing to donate the space. I was so excited. And so then I put out a call for writers, and I said, I'd love it to be serious writers only, please, maybe folks that have already been published, so that we can all give really honest criticism and feedback. And I put out the call, and I put it in about a dozen places, and got absolutely no takers. I was pretty depressed. I was pretty sad about that. And one day, walking through the space, this huge, empty, and beautiful, and eclectic, and bizarre space, with my kids and my wife, I said, what could I possibly do? They've donated this space for free every Monday for the next 6 months. What could we do in this space? And my wife said, well, why don't you make a series about a writer's group? Well, who does that? You mean a bunch of writers sitting in a room together? And yeah, exactly that. Because if it's interesting to you, I'd be willing to bet it's going to be interesting to other people. And that just got the gears turning. And all the pieces seemed to fall into place. There's this amazing line in episode 8 of the Laurels where Ash says, I didn't need the world to fall apart. I just needed to fall into place. And that's exactly how I felt with this. I knew immediately that I wanted to try something completely new. If I was going to stay with film and not switch over back to novels, I wanted to try writing with a co-writer for the first time ever. And so I asked my mother, who prior to devoting her life to her 2 children, had been a poet, and I thought this is perfect, because I want to try to frame this series around a poet laureate, and I think that Carol will, my mom, will really get all the different kind of writers that there are out there. And so the idea came to fruition in that way, and I feel very blessed that she said yes, because I know for certain that I would not have been able to write this particular series by myself. People can work with a co-writer in a lot of different ways. There's no right way or wrong way to work with a co-writer. Some folks, one person does a draft of the entire script or the entire story, and then the second writer comes in and polishes and expands. That's absolutely one way to do it. Another way is, you play to your strengths. Someone beefs up the descriptions, the other person works on the dialogue. But I wanted to do things a little bit differently. I run an independent press called Angels of Anarchy, and we publish group-written novels and series in prose form, in novel form. And the way those work is every chapter is from a different character's third-person perspective. And every character is written by a different author, and it goes back and forth between the different characters, between the different authors. So I wanted to try to bring that to film, and luckily my mom, Carol, was totally game for that. So basically what that meant is she graced me with being able to write the cold opens and the epilogues. But if a scene focused on Kathy, Ruby, or Maria, my mom's characters, she wrote those scenes. And if a scene focused on Felicia, Lori, and Cole, or Ashley, I wrote the scenes. And I actually think that worked really, really well. We would then read the scenes to each other or exchange them back and forth to make sure, had we treated each other's characters fairly, if we had had some crossover? Did Carol feel that Maria would really say something like that? And it actually wound up being really smooth. I was very pleased with how that went, and I would actually do that particular, take that particular approach again. I really enjoyed working with Carol as a co-writer, and I would like to bring that to a series again, a kind of co-writer or group writing in some way. It was very rewarding and not as isolating as it normally is for me to be the sole writer on a series. On set, what did I do? Oh. What did I do on set? I mostly just sat back and I just let the characters, the actors just kind of run with the characters and just saw what came out. It was like ad-lib, like free for all, like nothing like that at all. On set, I was the cinematographer and the director for about half the episodes. And then about halfway through, Carol and I decided to try something really out there, which I think was a lot of fun, which was Carol, my mom, actually started directing her characters. And the reason that we decided to do that is I really wanted to make sure that as a writer, and being a writer, I know how this feels, she was seeing what she wanted from her characters as opposed to what me as a director and the cinematographer might want to see. And this was especially true about Ruby. Carol saw Ruby as more deeply wounded and probably more realistic to someone who has truly experienced Ruby's history. And I saw her as more spunky and courageous. Now, Ruby is both of those things, but I think Carol's direction for Eleanor about Ruby was more realistic in the end. So after that, then Carol and I shared the directing. She would direct her characters, I would direct mine, I would make overall comments. I also dressed the set with help from my wife Brianne, who ran boom mic for us. For the first time, we were using a boom mic on a boom pole and the whole kit and caboodle, so that was very interesting. We weren't wireless, we were connected, so Brianne and I wound up playing double dutch often with the long cord between the boom mic and the camera. Let's see. So in addition to that, I also tried to keep an eye on continuity, but mostly I would say it was my son Maxwell who was on top of that, and the actors yelling at me that there was one little thing here or there, or who they should be looking at. I am not a huge fan of TV. I think that in order to really enjoy a show, when I do enjoy a show, I tend to binge watch, which means I do tend to watch on Hulu or Netflix or Amazon Prime or something like this, where I can watch episode after episode after episode. I think it's more immersive and I can fall into a show better. I don't have a lot of time, and I definitely don't have time on a regular basis, 8 o'clock Monday, every single week. So that's completely out of the question for me. When I take the time to watch television, I tend to watch my first love, which is science fiction. I very much enjoyed Sense8, which was a Netflix original series. I thought it was phenomenal. There was very little I would have done differently. I really love watching independent film and independent short film. Mainstream, I think the last mainstream show that I really enjoyed was Sons of Anarchy. Again, though I did come to it really late, and I wound up catching it on Netflix. Some of my quirky loves of television are things like Switched at Birth. I was stunned that I kept watching and was actually engaged by both the teen characters and the parents. I don't think there's any other show where both the teens and the parents are equally as engaging, and I do try to bring that to my own work, that characters of all ages get equal screen time and are shown equal respect. But other than that, I'm not really drawn to television as a genre. I do prefer short film, or at least television where the episodes seem to stand alone like short films. So my characters that I was in charge of are Portia, Lori, and Cole, Felicia, and Ashley, or Ash. Some of my characters changed enormously from my original vision of them, and some were exactly as I wanted them to be. I I felt like I was trying to create challenges for some of the people that mean the most to me in my life. For my wife, Brienne, I gave her a character that I would have to say, in all honesty, in my opinion, is probably the farthest from her that anyone could possibly be. Brienne is emotional and introverted and quiet and sensitive, and Portia is big and brash and sassy and angry and world-traveled and has an opinion about everything. And I can honestly say that I feel Brienne really stepped up to the challenge, and she gave me the Portia that I wanted. And I hope that she appreciates the challenge that I gave her, but I don't know. We'll have to see if divorce papers are imminent or something like that. With Felicia, I tried to do the exact same thing. I had cast my daughter, Faith, many times before, and she said to me a couple of times very gently, I would like to play something new and different. You're always kind of casting me as sassy and strong. And I do like Faith as sassy and strong because she is sassy and strong. But she's also elegant, fashionable, conscious of herself, and very articulate, especially on topics that she's passionate about. And I had never given her something like that before. I was almost always casting her as like almost a borderline tomboy-esque character, like spunky tomboy character. So for Felicia, I wanted to give Faith that elegant, sophisticated young woman. And I know that wound up giving her some huge lines with huge words and just very large concepts that Felicia was always wrapping her young 14-year-old brain around. And Faith being 13 years old, 12 years old when we started filming, she also tackled that character with everything in her, and I hope that she loved it. I hope she doesn't hate me for giving her those many practice days and lots of big monologues. For Laurie and Cole, I think Meg and Maxwell are the two people that I didn't set out to challenge them. I set out to give them subtle, nuanced characters, and I just hoped and I prayed that the two of them would understand that these were not simple characters to me. They were multi-layered characters. And though they were arguably the most quiet characters in the series, in some ways, to me, they were the most important. And they were the ones that spoke to me and to my heart. I am the mother of an autistic child. Only recently has the Pediatric Health Foundation's, whatever that organization is, divided autism and Asperger's. My experience is not identical to Laurie's experience, but emotionally I felt a real kindred with Laurie, and I thought that both Meg and Maxwell gave me exactly what I wanted for those characters. The character that transformed the most after the casting of the actor was Ashley, or Ash. In my head, when I was writing a character profile, which Carol and I did for all the characters of Ashley, I envisioned her as blonde, long hair to her waist, bubbly, evangelical Christian young lady. And though Jeannie is certainly positive, and she plays Ashley as a positive, almost bubbly character, she certainly is not the physical image, nor is the character. She doesn't really start where originally I thought she was going to start. I was nervous throughout the entire production of The Laurels, but every single episode, every new week would roll around, because we shot one episode a week, sometimes 2 episodes in one day, but we only met once a week. Every time we would meet again, Jeannie would take Ashley that next step toward becoming Ash, toward showing that group of characters, that group of women and Cole, the true Ashley, the true Ash inside her. And in the end, I was impressed and thrilled with what Jeannie brought to the role, but it was definitely different than I had originally envisioned. As a matter of fact, originally I had wanted a character, an actor who would be willing to wear a wig, so that at the end, Ashley becoming Ash would cut his hair. But we didn't need that. Jeannie was able to show that transformation without anything as on the nose as cutting the hair. So I was thrilled with all of my characters, from whether they changed from the original vision or not. I think that the Laurels coming to an end, this being one of almost our truly final filming day. We still have some pickup shots to do and some work to do with Portia that's isolated from the rest of the cast. Looking back on the process, there's a couple of things that leap to mind that I say to myself, I never want to repeat that again. But to be brutally honest, I think there is only one thing that I know I will never repeat again. I will never again shoot in a building in the middle of summer that is not air conditioned. Let's be blunt, I sweat so profusely, and we did not have any set lights set up. Just being in the building and moving around, playing double dutch with Brienne as much as we did. I think I probably lost 100 pounds just in the pure, unadulterated heat. Yes, there were other things that were challenging. And also it was very expensive. The process was very expensive. I recently saw on social media, a friend of mine is launching a short film, and they're running a fundraising campaign for their short film for $16,000. Now, the Laurels was not that expensive, but craft services alone for 8 weeks for 10 people. If you watch the series closely, there are a lot of very specific props that had to be purchased. And even though Carol and I tried very much to avoid that kind of thing, we did both wind up investing an enormous amount of money in the series. Again, not $16,000, but more than I think both of us had anticipated. I think the most joyful part of the series was, and I'm laughing because I had wanted to return to novel writing and have a writer's group because I was feeling isolated. But one of the most joyful things for me was staying up into the wee hours of the night and writing my parts of these scripts and living as those characters and getting to fall into the contemporary lives of people that are very different from me. Now, I know that I should say that my most joyous moment of this project was working with my grandmother, my mother, my wife, my children, my sister, and 3 actors that were relatively new to me or brand new to me. And actually, I don't think I'm going to say that, because that just felt like life to me. That felt like how things are meant to be. Sometimes we squabbled and we were short with each other and we were cranky in the 390-degree heat in this building. And other times we were laughing and it was hysterical and we got the best bloopers ever. I really enjoy being a member of my family with all the ups and all the downs, and this project perfectly exemplified that. 90% were family members related to me by marriage or blood, and everybody else were folks along for the ride. And that just felt like every day, and that was a really cool thing to bring in front of the camera. My favorite episode to film, and my favorite episode of the actors, is episode 7. I loved the emotional rawness of that episode. I love what the actors brought to it. I think everyone gave 210%. There was a lot of movement within the room, more than we had done before. People getting up and going to each other, embracing, leaving the room altogether, standing in different locations. So I know that physically there was a little bit more challenge there, but I think that the emotional territory that we crossed, that we ventured into in episode 7, was done excellently by everyone. Everyone handled their roles beautifully. So from an acting perspective, a performance perspective, maybe from the viewer's perspective, I think 7 is my favorite. My favorite to write was episode 8, because I loved being able to really completely mess with the viewers and say, okay, so you thought you knew what was going on, but did you think this? Did you think that? I liked being able to build more layers. At first, in the beginning of episode 8, showing Portia driving through town and like being stuck, talking about the first times that we experience things in our lives, things go slow. But then as life continues, things start to speed up and go faster and faster. Is that because nothing is a first anymore? And that idea that her life is kind of stuck, going round and around and around and around in that roundabout, until she sees that random teen girl typing away on her phone. And she has that spark of inspiration. And then seeing each of the other strangers throughout the town that become her sparks of inspiration for each of the characters that she writes into the Laurels. And then moving on from there, seeing each of the characters from the Laurels getting ready to go to their next writers group meeting, and Portia appearing in their scene as if she's writing it from inside the scene. Now, one of the things that changed about 8 is from the very beginning, Carol had the idea of a ball jar. This reminded me of the very classic show that has appeared where the ending image was the entire series had been a dream in a snow globe. And Carol's idea was that Portia actually had the women in a ball jar. She had been writing them, she controlled them. And when we got to 8, and I sat down, it suddenly occurred to me, a ball jar is portrait and the room is landscape. These women are going to be so tiny, no one's going to be able to see what they are in the jar. And I sat there at that computer screen in the middle of the night for the longest time going, how do I fix this? Also, ball jars aren't like a ship in the bottle jar that's clear. They're imprinted, so that was going to further obscure what could be seen inside this jar. So finally, I came up with this idea because there are these random miniature treasure chests that are scattered throughout the building where we filmed. I thought, well, what if Portia has all the women in this treasure chest, and at the same time, Portia herself is in the treasure chest, just like she was in the scenes. And so we went with the treasure chest idea. But this wasn't exactly the image that Carol and I had originally wanted. And over the course of the week between finishing 8 and when we actually filmed 8, that's how close the script came in, various members of the family, including my daughter Faith and my uncle David, my mom's brother, proposed different ideas. Faith did say, well, why don't we change it into a ship in the bottle and just take the ship out? And David said, well, you've already got Felicia opening one box, and you've got Portia opening an identical box on her side. What if, for an alternative ending, we showed what's in those boxes, and what's in those boxes is in Felicia's box is Portia, and in Portia's box is the women. And I thought, well, there you go. There is a compromise between the box and the jar. And it still leaves it open to who is the dreamer and who is the dreamed, which was important to me. I don't know how I want to dive into this. I guess I'll just be blunt and I'll be honest. I think most television is stupid. And I don't mean by that it's silly or poorly done or too small a budget or anything like that. I think that it's unintelligent. I don't think it asks anything of the viewer. If anything, I think it allows not all television, but a lot of television today. It says to the viewer, go ahead, sit down, get a snack, turn your brain off. Now, I don't know if this statistic is urban legend or not. Maybe I need to go over to Snopes.com and check it out. But this statistic about we use less of our brain watching television than we do sleeping. She's telling me I use more of my brain dreaming than I do when I sit down and watch a television show, even if it's one that I love. I want to think when I watch a television show. I have no interest in having any downtime. I'm not on this planet for very long. None of us are. I don't want to sit and turn off my brain. I like my brain. And I like when it gets to think about new things. If television doesn't make me think about new things, I don't want to watch it. I might not agree on what it's telling me to think about. I might not agree on what it's saying is the truth, but it's going to make me think, and I want to think. To me, the Laurels is important television because love it or hate it, it's going to make you think. You're going to think you know what's going on with this character or that character. You're going to think that you know what's happening. You're going to think that you understand everything Portia is saying, or not. So you watch it again, and you watch it again. Maybe you fast forward through the parts that, oh no, you know what's going on there. And you just watch the parts that confuse you or that make you wonder. But no matter what, I really do believe that the Laurels asks the viewer to think. And I think we need more of that. Why are so many of us looking for escape? Oh, I use my brain so much at work. I just want to come home and turn it off. What? Why? So you're going to give all your brain power to some faceless corporate brand? Come home and think. Come home and create. Come home and do something that 60 years from now, you're going to be proud that you did. I don't think I'm going to come to the end of my life and say, I wish I hadn't worked as much, because the work that I'm doing is so rewarding. And often I drag my family into that work with me.